Hi there. Today we're having a look at a Junkyard motor that we've bought, and we're going to go through the checks that we need to see how much work we've got to do to it. We need to find out if we've got to have machine work done to it. So it's when we've actually rebuilt it in the future, it's going to be going in this truck just here, which is my 97 Chevy Suburban. So here we've got a small block Chevy motor. It's one of the last ones produced. I think they call it an L32 motor. So we're going to go through the checks and see how good or bad it is and if we can use it.
When I bought this motor, I was told that it was a good one. These end caps were taken off by the company I bought it from, and they said that it was in a superb condition and looked like it had been rebuilt. So we're now taking the big end cap off, or the connecting rod bearing cap, so that we can see what sort of condition the bearings are underneath. Let's give them a quick wipe. Now they are in absolutely fantastic condition. They look new. No sign of any scoring or wear in the white metal surface. Couldn't ask for better so far. Let's hope the rest of it looks as good. Now inspecting the journal on the crank, and that seems to be in exactly the same condition. So hopefully we won't need any machining on this at all. Now we just need to rotate the crank a little, set the pistons in line with the bore, and then it can be gently pushed out. It's not cooperating, so a little bit of a wiggle on the crank just to straighten it up a bit. Then just gently push it through. Make sure you don't drop it on the floor though. On a closer inspection of the piston, we can see that there's a little bit of blow-by showing in them brown patches, which is gases getting past the piston rings and marking the piston. You do expect to get some of that, and it seems to be normal. It could be if it's just been used on lots of short journeys and not had a chance to go through a full heat cycle. Overall, they look pretty good. All the rings are still moving freely. They're not gummed up. There's some carbon deposits on the top of the piston, which is to be expected, but there's nothing that's showing us that there's something wrong with these pistons and that we need to look further. They look like they should be usable. Now we're just going to go through all the rest of the pistons in exactly the same way. Notice how all of the bearings are being put and matched back onto the piston that they've come from, and the pistons are being laid out on the bench in order. With this engine I've been really lucky, and all of the pistons are in the same condition as the first one that we looked at, and all of the bearings. So far this engine is looking really good. On a closer inspection of the big end bearings, it looks like these are not oversized, they're not marked as oversized, so that the crank hasn't had a regrind. And on a closer inspection, it appears that we've found a date code and that these bearings were made in 2014. So this engine has had a rebuild since then. Next, we remove the timing gear and the timing chain. Having a look at those, the timing chain seems really good. It doesn't seem worn. It would be curved if it was worn, so the links aren't worn. And on closer inspection of the inner, there's no heavy gouge marks or anything like that in there. So this timing chain looks to be in really good condition. And looking at the gear, all the teeth seem to be nice. No sharp teeth, they're all nice and flat. It indicates that this motor hasn't done a lot of work since it was rebuilt. and it probably had new timing gear at that time. The timing gear attached to the end of the crank is also in superb condition. It looks like somebody's been an animal with some mole grips on the end of the crank, so that's something we will have to deal with later. We can smooth it out with a bit of abrasive paper. So just taking off the retaining plate for the cam. Again, that's another part showing no signs of wear. Wait for the camera to focus up, you can see it looks brand new. So time to take the cam out and see what that tells us about the state of this engine. When you're taking these cams out, you've got to be really careful and gentle because you don't want to knock the cam bearings out as you go in. So just gently feel it as it's coming out. Once it's all lined up, it should come out pretty smoothly. Here we go. And this cam is in amazing condition. It looks brand new. It looks like that when this had a rebuild, it had a new cam as well. The gear for the distributor is perfect as well. The next job is to remove all the main caps that hold the crank in. These were already loosened off by the company that sold me the engine. So here we go, let's remove the first one. We'll see what sort of condition this is in. These are fantastic condition again, no wear at all. One thing that you've got to note with main caps is they match the number for each journal. That arrow points to the front of the engine, so you know you're fitting them the right way round, and there's the number, that's number 2. If yours are not numbered on whatever engine you're rebuilding, make sure that you do number them and put them back in exactly the right place. If you don't, your engine won't last very long at all. Here's the last cap coming off. As you can see, like all the rest, in fantastic condition. The last piece to remove before we can take the crank out is the rear crank seal, or the main crank seal. This one's actually in really good condition, but we will be replacing the seal as we've got it in the gasket kit anyway. Crank looks good. Time to lift it out and put that down safely. Now we're going to inspect the main bearings that are in the block. And just like the others, they're absolutely spot on. Just turning the engine over, and we're going to remove the retainer that holds the guides for the cam followers. This engine has a roller cam, so it's got roller lifters. And then once that's out, we're going to remove the cam followers. We actually meant to remove these before we started doing any work, but it's not caused any problems, but it would have just been a better idea to do it then. So let's clean out the bores and we can have a proper look at this bare block. All of the cylinders are in very, very good condition. with all the hatch marks still in them. Don't look like they've done much work, except this one. This one's got water damage. Obviously, after it was rebuilt, it had suffered a head gasket failure and water had got in there, but we're now going to try and hone it out because it's not very bad. So if we can hone it out, that'll be great. So on to honing this bad bore and see if we can get it right. So just got to use the honing tool evenly up and down the bore. Ideally we would have had some honing oil or cutting oil, but we don't happen to have any on the day we were doing this, so we've just gone with a WD-40 type oil. As long as we use plenty of it, it'll still do the job fine. So there we go, honed. Let's see what condition it's in. So after giving that a bit of a hone, you can see that the mark is clearly still visible. So we're going to have to hone it a bit more. Hopefully this is going to get it. This is the one bore that could mean that we have to rebore all of the cylinders. If this one won't come right, then we've got to rebore it, then it's new pistons and everything to go with it once it's bored over. So I'm really hoping that this one's going to come good. Well, you can still see it, but it's much reduced. It's getting far less than the first hone. So let's give it another go. We've basically got to keep going until this comes good. If the bore's too big after that, then we're just going to have to look at a rebore. This can's about done. Looks like third time's the charm. That watermark's now gone and that bore is now usable, so long as it's not oversized. That's one thing we're going to have to establish later on. While we've got the hone out, we're going to actually hone all of the bores. We're just deglazing them. As you can see, we're not actually doing it for very long at all. That's enough for that one. It's debatable whether these bores actually need honing, but it's just a quick deglaze. We may as well while we've got the tool all set up. We've already done the other side, so this now is the last bore to be done. So that's the last one done. Time to scrape the gasket off of the face of the block. Now what we're doing is just trying to clean this block out as best as we can. This is the time to do it, so blowing out all the oilways, waterways, anything we can find, just in case there's any debris hidden in there. Now we've got to measure these bores and make sure that they're correct. So we're measuring across. These from the factory are a 4-inch bore. So exactly 4 inches. These have never been overbored and they look to be absolutely spot on. What we've done is worked our way around, we've measured them multiple times in multiple directions. Now all of the bores, including the one that we've honed, are still absolutely great. The one that was honed is 1 thou different to the others. So that's it, this engine is a good one. It doesn't look like we've got any machining to do, and a lot of the parts are salvageable, so not many new parts to buy.
So after going through all those procedures, we've established that this block is in really good condition. Even the bearings are reusable, which is crazy. I would never have thought that it would be in such good condition as it is. It's clearly been rebuilt at some point, and it's not done a lot of work since it was rebuilt. So this is going to make a great engine without costing a fortune to rebuild. That's a fantastic result. Later on, we'll be putting this engine into the Suburban, so hopefully we'll be able to get some footage of that for you so you can see how that project goes on, and hopefully it'll be back on the road soon. So if you like our videos, remember to subscribe and we'll see you next time.